Hi, this is Bobby Hesley, and I want to tell you why I, as a black man, cannot and will not support Black Lives Matter, and why you shouldn't either. So let's first start off with some definitions. What do we mean when we hear that phrase Black Lives Matter? Because we've been hearing a lot of it in the last 6 or 7 weeks since the death of George Floyd. Since that time, the country has been in complete disarray. We're entering into an all-out civil war. There's riots, there's looting everywhere, so we have to talk about this issue because that's what everyone else is talking about. So the Black Lives Matter means two things, okay? Depending on who you're talking to, they mean one of these two things. It either means the organization or the slogan, hashtag, saying of Black Lives Matter, right? So let's start with the organization. Who or what is Black Lives Matter? Black Lives Matter is an organization that was started back in 2012 by 3 black feminist women. That's who the founders of Black Lives Matter is. It's a matter of public record. You can go right on their website and read all about who they are, what their philosophies are. They were started in response to the killing of Trayvon Martin back in 2012. So just right there turns the narrative on its head that it has absolutely nothing to do with police brutality as to why it was originally founded. Because Trayvon Martin was killed by George Zimmerman, who was a neighborhood watchman. He was not a police officer. So it had nothing to do with police brutality. It has since gained a lot of steam in the coming years. They have attached themselves to lots of hotbed racial issues ever since that pretty much only revolve around police brutality, okay? So that's who the organization is. And as a matter of fact, I'm gonna read a little bit from their mission statement about the what they believe section on their website. This is right from blacklivesmatter.com. It says, we build a space that affirms black women and is free from sexism, misogyny, and environments in which men are the center. So in other words, they're not about supporting black men, contrary to popular opinion. They're only about supporting black women. And then it continues. It says, we disrupt the Western prescribed nuclear family structure requirement by supporting each other as extended families and villages, it even puts villages in quotes, that collectively, pay attention to that word collectively, because that's communistic language, care for one another, especially our children, to the degree that mothers, parents, and children are comfortable. Did you get that, folks? To the degree that mothers, parents, and children are comfortable. Notice it makes no reference to fathers. Because again, it was started by 3 black feminists. They have no interest in having fathers in the home. And true to the form of feminism, they're all about destroying the nuclear family. And that is what has destroyed the black family. Since the war on poverty legislations of the 1960s, what was known as the Great Society, where the state became the husband and father, okay? The husband and father was removed from the home. He was replaced by the state to the point where single mothers are financially rewarded for keeping the father of their children out of the home. Otherwise, they lose their welfare benefits. It's specifically called the man in the house rule. Look it up when you get a chance. It's called the man in the house rule, okay? And it's to reward single black mothers to take the father out of the home. That's the biggest problem plaguing the black community right now is fatherlessness. Most of our problems can be traced back to that. So that's who Black Lives Matter as an organization is, that are all about taking the father out of the home and that are all about disrupting the nuclear family structure, which they say unapologetically on their website. They're funded by George Soros, who is a billionaire Marxist that has pumped hundreds of millions of dollars into that organization. In just the last few months, they've raised between $200 to $300 million since the death of George Floyd. All during an election year. They don't raise that kind of money during years that aren't election years. The last time they had a really good year like that was back in 2016, which is interesting. What happened in the other 4 years up until now? There was no mention there. But that's who the organization is. They're a communist organization. And as a Christian, you have no business supporting Black Lives Matter, especially as a Catholic Christian, because the heart of Marxism and the founders of Black Lives Matter are on record saying that they are trained Marxists. Okay.
I think that the criticism is helpful. I also think that it might, I think of a lot of things. The first thing I think is that we actually do have an ideological frame. Myself and Alicia in particular are trained organizers. We are trained Marxists. We are super versed on sort of ideological theories.
As a Catholic, you have no business supporting Black Lives Matter because the heart of Marxism, the centerpiece of Marxism, is anti-Catholicism. And that's why there are numerous papal encyclicals that have been written that have condemned, harshly condemned, communism and Marxism. Pope Leo XIII, Pope St. John Paul II. There's all kinds of papal encyclicals that have rejected Marxism. And as a Catholic, you should reject Marxism too. So that's who the organization is. Now, we've spent enough time on that. Let's move on to the next aspect of this, is what is Black Lives Matter? Okay? I talked about who Black Lives Matter is. Let's talk about what Black Lives Matter is. Most people are starting to separate the organization from the movement. But I don't call it a movement. It's more of a slogan. It's more of a hashtag. It's more of a euphemism. This notion of Black Lives Matter. Now, it's a disingenuous term. It's a fraudulent term because Black lives truly don't matter to Black Lives Matter. For all you people out there that are virtue signaling, that are self-righteously putting black squares on your Facebook profile and being keyboard activists, okay, and think that you feel special just because you blacked out your Facebook profile with a black square, civil rights ancestors would be turning in their graves right now. Because back in the 50s and 60s, when they were actually fighting real racism, when it actually did exist, they were being lynched, they were being hosed down, they were having police canines sicked on them, they were being beat in the streets, they were being burned out of their homes, burned out of their churches, burned out of their schools. Those are the real civil rights activists that actually suffered on behalf of civil rights. They didn't just put up a little black square on their Facebook profile. Not that Facebook existed back in the 50s, but you get what I'm saying. You are not fighting racism. You are not standing up for us black people or fighting civil rights if you just think that blacking out your Facebook profile is all you have to do. I'm insulted and offended by that. I know you've been locked up. I know you've been quarantined and you probably, are going stir crazy and you need to do something that makes you feel good about yourself. But don't act like you care about black people by putting a little black square and a little hashtag on your Facebook profile and think that you're making a difference for us. You know what's going to make the difference for us black people? I'm a black man telling you this. You can't argue with my blackness, okay? You can't argue with my blackness. And the fact of the matter is this black man is telling you that if you really want to convince me that Black Lives matter to you, then you need to stop it with all the selective moral outrage. You need to stop it with the self-righteous virtue signaling that only focuses on a tiny little portion, a tiny little fragment of black people that are killed by white cops. And why do I say a tiny little fragment? Because so far as of 2020, we've had 9 black men that were killed by white cops. 9. What about the 900 black babies that are aborted every single day? That's why I reject the Black Lives Matter slogan, because black lives really don't matter to people that say that. What about the 5,000 to 7,000 black on black violence victims that are killed every single year? You never hear people that support Black Lives Matter speaking out against that. They only speak out against black men who are killed by white cops, which happens a very small portion of the time. 9 black men in 2020, that's 9 men too many. But in most of those circumstances, the shootings were justified. I did a whole video on Rayshard Brooks on my YouTube channel that you can find. It was totally justified why he was killed, as is the case with most others. But oftentimes, for those of us who oppose the slogan, again, I'm not talking about the organization, I covered that. When we talk about the slogan, when we talk about the hashtag, about how it's disingenuous and fake and fraudulent, we're often accused of using what's called a red herring, which is a form of distraction argument, right? We're accused of using distraction argumentation. We're accused of, I've even been accused by this, a black man, been accused of by using what's called whataboutism. I had a white person that I was debating with online. He actually accused me of using whataboutism, which is a form of argumentation that in the mind of the other person, they think you're distracting from the point they're trying to make. So when they're raising the issue of black men that are killed by cops, I'll say, well, what about abortion? Or what about black on black violence? They call that whataboutism. I've been a Catholic pro-lifer for my entire life. I'll be 40 years old in a few months. I've been Catholic pro-life my whole life. And every time I would actually use that argument against them. Those who support Black Lives Matter, you're the ones that are using whataboutism. You're the ones that are using distraction argumentation and using red herrings. Because for as far back as I can remember in my life, every time I speak out against abortion, And you want to do some math? 900 black babies are killed every single day by a white racist eugenicist organization named Planned Parenthood, who was founded by Margaret Sanger, that had a project that she called the Negro Project, where her goal was to exterminate the black population through contraception and through abortion. So you want to talk about the real systemic racism? You want to fight systemic racism? Oppose Planned Parenthood. Don't defund the police, defund Planned Parenthood. Planned Parenthood is the source of all the systemic racism. We talk about all this systemic racism that's killed 9 black men so far in 2020 when it comes to cops. What about the systemic racism that kills 328,500 unarmed black people every day? That is the systemic racism of Planned Parenthood. 900 times 365. 900 black babies multiplied by 365, that's 328,500 of our people that are slaughtered every single year by Planned Parenthood. Yet we don't hear anything about that. So every time I stand up for life, and we've been shouting out against abortion going on 50 years now, since 1973. We've been shouting out against black on black violence since the 60s. And every time I speak out against it, I'm the one who gets hit with that distraction argumentation. When I talk about the 900 babies that are killed every day, you know who's using the whataboutism? Not me. The people that support Black Lives Matter. They're the ones using whataboutism. They're like, oh, okay, 900 black babies. I'm sorry to hear that. Well, what about the one guy that was killed by a cop last year? That's the whataboutism. When I talk about the 324,000 black on black violence victims in the last 35 years, what's the first word out of people's mouth when I talk to that support Black Lives Matter? Well, what about George Floyd? What about Trayvon Martin? Let me tell you something. Black men who get killed by police officers is such a rare occurrence. It's such a rare occurrence that when it happens, it makes world headlines like George Floyd. If what happened to George Floyd was so common, then why did it make world headlines? Why does the entire world know who George Floyd is? I'm here in Thailand right now, and I took a Grab a few weeks ago back from the mall to my condo. Grab is the Uber of Thailand. My Uber driver, he couldn't even speak English. Or my Grab driver, he could barely speak English. You know the one sentence he was able to get out? So sorry, George Floyd. That's what he said to me. So sorry, George Floyd. 8,000 miles away from where it happened, I got my Thai Grab driver apologizing to me about what happened to George Floyd. Why? Because it's such a rare occurrence. That's why. If it was something that happened every day or very often, like KKK brutality back in the day, or lynchings, or the actual police brutality that really used to happen during the Jim Crow times of segregation, then we wouldn't hear much outrage about it because it was commonly accepted. But the fact that white on black police brutality is so rare, the few times it happens, it's a big deal because it's such a rare occurrence. So that's why I don't support the hashtag, the slogan, Black Lives Matter. Now, some people will say, well, all lives matter. And I believe that all lives matter. And that's probably the worst thing that you could say to somebody who supports the Black Lives Matter slogan, because they're going to brand you as a racist. But the fact is, I've actually been saying a slogan, and it's funny because I said this on an interview a couple of weeks ago, but I'm not a popular guy like Terry Crews, who just was on CNN, and he actually said that all Black Lives Matter. It's funny, I kind of beat him to that, but the interview wasn't made that public. I've been saying for years that all Black Lives matter. All lives do matter. But that's not what people are talking about. People are talking about Black Lives Matter. So if we're going to talk about Black lives, let's talk about Black lives. Let's talk about all Black lives, okay? Let's not only talk about the tiny percentage of Black lives that are killed by cops. Let's talk about the 900 black babies that are aborted every year, to the tune of 16 to 20 million unarmed black lives that have been ended since Roe versus Wade. And I'm being pretty literal when I say that they are unarmed black lives, because their arms are literally cut off. They are dismembered with scissors in their mother's wombs. You want to talk about unarmed blacks being killed? We have 20 million black babies missing their arms and their legs and their heads because they were sliced and diced by abortion doctors in their womb, who the founders of Black Lives Matter actually celebrate because they're feminists. That's why you never hear the organization speaking out against abortion, because they actually want abortion. They're actually pushing abortion, and they're pushing the breakup of the black family. So if we're going to talk about black lives, you need to have a consistent life ethic and talk about all black lives. Don't just talk about the ones that the leftists want you to talk about. And that's why I don't use the phrase Black Lives Matter, because I'm not going to use the language of the left. I'm not going to co-opt Marxist, communistic language to talk about a topic that they're not even interested in talking about. For those of you who believe that Black Lives Matter, yeah, maybe you don't support the organization, but maybe you support the slogan, maybe you support the hashtag. Maybe it made you feel good about yourself to put the little black square on your Facebook page on Blackout Tuesday and use the little hashtag. If you're one of those people that made yourself feel good using that hashtag, oh, Black Lives Matter to me, I'm woke, I really care. Let me see how woke you are. I'm gonna ask you a rhetorical question, and it's rhetorical because I already know what the answer is. I want to ask you something. If you believe in hashtag Black Lives Matter, do you know who Sequoia Turner is? You got 3 seconds to answer it. Don't go on Google. You should be able, off the top of your head, to tell me right now who Sequoia Turner is. Do you know who Sequoia Turner is? Yes or no? 3, 2, 1. You have no idea who Sequoia Turner is. I do, but you don't. You know why? Because Sequoia Turner is a black 8-year-old girl who is unarmed, who was gunned down on the 4th of July weekend in Atlanta, Georgia, not too far away from the Wendy's where Rayshard Brooks was killed for resisting arrest and trying to shoot cops with their tasers. She's a black, innocent 18-year-old girl that was caught in crossfire between Black Lives Matter armed militants and other groups that they were shooting at. Her and her mom had the misfortune of crossing a barricade, an illegal barricade, that was set up by the Black Lives Matter activists. And as a result, this 8-year-old girl's life was snuffed out. Now, why am I using her as an example? Because her mother and father appeared in court and they specifically said, where is Black Lives Matter?
They say Black Lives Matter. You killed your own. Killed your own this time. Just because of a barrier. They killed my baby because she crossed the barrier and made a U-turn. You killed a child. She ain't do nothing to nobody.
They started shooting on my car before we could even make a U-turn. Shooting my tires out, like, why?
But Black Lives Matter.
My baby was shot in her bed.
Killing your own.
Nobody there to help
You
me.
killed an 8-year-old child.
Nobody.
She ain't did nothing to now one of y'all. She just wanted to get home to see her cousin. That's all she wanted to do. She just wanted to get home.
Why doesn't my little girl's life matter to Black Lives Matter? They didn't say a word about her, just like they don't say a word about the 20 million black babies that have been killed that are literally unarmed because their arms were cut off in their mother's wombs along with all their other body parts. They don't say anything about the 324,000 black people that were killed in black on black violence in the last 35 years because the only black lives that matter to those who support Black Lives Matter, whether it's the slogan or the organization, are the ones that are killed by white cops. And again, nine guys killed by white cops, too many. Should there be police reform? I'm sure there is, but it shouldn't be, the cure shouldn't be worth the disease. Thanks to Black Lives Matter, ever since 2013, with the death of Michael Brown, there's a new phenomenon that has struck the inner city known as the Ferguson Effect. I'll link to it at the bottom of this article, at the bottom of this video. The Ferguson Effect is a new phenomenon among law enforcement officers. Well, it's not new, it's been going on for about 7 years now, where crime has increased sharply across all the inner cities of the United States. Crime and murder and everything else has increased sharply. Why? Because cops are now restraining themselves, they're now suppressing themselves, they're now stifling their instinct to protect and serve because they don't want to be branded as racist if they intervene in a crime. Because they don't want to be put on trial. They don't want to have their lives and their reputations destroyed. So now, because of Black Lives Matter and because of all this overreach that happens as a result of these police incidents with the black community, now we have this Ferguson effect that's making black communities more unsafe for the people who live there, more unsafe for the people that would want to invest there, that would fix up the community, because now property values are going down because of increased crime, because of increased drugs, because of increased homicide rate, because of decreased police presence, because the police are pulling out of inner cities because everybody's wanting to defund them, everybody's wanting to demonize them, everybody's wanting to make them out to be these Nazis that are cruising for a bruising. So they're pulling back. And as a result of that pullback, black people are suffering. Poor black people, the ones that Black Lives Matter, whether it's the organization or the hashtag, are supposedly out to help, are now suffering due to the Ferguson Effect. Look it up. It's indisputable. So this is why, as a pro-life Catholic who has a consistent life ethic from womb to tomb, who believe that all life is sacred, cannot and will not support Black Lives Matter. And this is why you, no matter what your color, creed, whatever ism is, you should not support Black Lives Matter either. I'm a black man telling you that you should not support Black Lives Matter, because all they want is your money, and all they want is you basically promoting their organization for free. They're laughing while they rake in all those profits. Their power grows, their profit grows, and their influence grows, and they're using your ignorance to grow it. They're using our need to want a virtue signal and feel good about ourselves for standing up for the little black guy, but don't be their pawn. Don't be their puppet. This black man is telling you not to support them. I don't support them, and neither should you. God bless, and I'll see you on the next video.